evening. My name is Leonard Collins. This is the September 12th, 2013 meeting of the Charles County Charter Board. This Charter Board is a creature of the Maryland Constitution. One of the ways the Charter Board can be formed and come into being is by action of the local government, and that's what we had in this case. The Charles County Commissioners appointed 9 of your fellow citizens to be on the board. The Maryland Constitution requires that the board be at least 5 and no more than 9. Our task is to write a new form of county government. The Maryland Constitution allows us 18 months to draft our proposal. It will be on the it will be on the ballot along with your choices for governor, state delegates, county commissioners, and so forth in November of 2014. The Constitution requires that we submit our proposed charter for publication by the county commissioners at least 90 days and no more than 120 days before the election. So it'll be on the ballot for the voters to accept or reject in November of 2014. We've listened to many current and former government officials regarding their suggestions for this government. The topics have included, but aren't limited to, should we have a county executive? Should we establish term limits? How many council members should a county council have? Should the council members be elected at large or by district? What checks and balances should be in place? Would changes be cost effective? Should we impose taxing, spending, and or borrowing limits? The list I just mentioned isn't exhaustive. We're still open to hearing from experts and officials as we proceed. We intend to have public forums, first, so that we can hear from the public and educate ourselves regarding the viewpoints the public has, and second, to share with the public how we weigh the options and reach a consensus on each issue. Tonight we have Victor Turbolo with us. He's going to help us establish a framework for writing this charter. He was associated with the University of Maryland and has helped write, I believe, 7 other charters, some of which have been voted up and some of which have been voted down, but that'll be ultimately up to the public. Tonight, I thought we should start with some issues that one of the board members raised with regard to how we should proceed. Okay, and I believe we gave you a copy of Mr. Will's email. So, do you have that in?
I don't have it in front of me, but I remember the nature of the question was voting. Is that correct?
That was one question that he raised, yes.
And my experience is that, my preference as well as my experience is that it's better for us not to take any votes, no formal votes. There are 3 reasons for that, I guess, if I can recall the 3 reasons. The first reason, I think, is that in this board at least, you will change your mind. No matter if we start voting today, you're going to change your mind on it. Number 2, this board hasn't really even, I guess, questioned the voters at this point. And until you question the voters, you really don't know where you might be. You might have your preferences involved. You might have your preferences in place, but it's often useful to, in fact, always useful to get what the voters' preferences are. And thirdly, there shouldn't be any winners and losers at this point. I think because this is a long process. We're going to do this all the way until June, maybe into July. And in my view, and in my experience, the best thing to do is just wait and keep everything open so everything is flowing. If we start taking votes now, we're going to start bogging down. And the idea now is just to move, because there's a lot of things that we can probably agree on, and there's probably just a few points that we probably can't agree on. So my view is we just keep on rolling. Eventually, we'll go on back, pick up the things you couldn't get consensus on. We might get consensus at the beginning. We might get consensus somewhere on these issues in the middle. And we might get them in the end. As I understand it, the issues that you guys are hung up on is the issues that everybody hangs up on, which is the size of the governing body. How do you elect the governing body? This is what, through the last charter board, it throws every charter board I have never been in a charter board yet that didn't change their mind several times. Even after a draft has been done, they went out to the public and said, what do you think? Public came back and says, we hate it. They came back and changed it. It is one of the stickiest issues. So my view is, let's not stick on that issue. Let's just keep on rolling, keep it open, and then at the end of the game, take one vote, up or down. Everybody know at that point where people are on what we have in the charter. So
let me pass the email along to you, and I underlined one sentence there that and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, but it seems as if is there a concern that when we say something would be challengeable, you have a concern that it would be legally challengeable?
No, I don't want to make that big a deal out of it. All I'm saying, you say go ahead and roll along, just get consensus. And the way I'm coming from is, what do you mean by just roll along? I mean, do we nod? Do we nod our heads if we agree?
No, it's a great question.
And why can't we take preliminary votes on issues?
Well, chances are, let me tell you what I'm thinking.
Because let me just finish line. Why can't we take preliminary votes? A preliminary vote by definition is preliminary. It is not final. Everyone on this board realizes that we cannot write a charter until we get all the input from the public. Because ultimately, the public has to approve it. So there's no sense going through that process. But I don't know why we can't take preliminary votes on issues. I mean, for example, in, was it Frederick or Cecil? I think it was Cecil County. They actually drafted their charter and then went out to the public, which tells me that they made some decisions.
Yes.
And so I'm just trying to understand why it is that we can't make any decisions.
And I'm suggesting it's the same process. What I'm suggesting is that, we read a provision in the charter, and we look around the room and say, anybody going to live with what we have in that provision? And somebody says, no, I really would like to see changes here. And so we discuss about that. If we can reach a general consensus of what is in that in that section, we move on. If we can't, we'll keep on, and if we really get stuck, we'll just say, well, we'll just move on entirely.
But how do we record the consensus? That's my.
You don't have to record it.
You don't have to record
If it's
it.
in the draft, it's a consensus.
It's a consensus, it's a working consensus, this is what we have at the moment that we make this decision.
Okay.
And it's not as I said, not a hard decision, just to say, can we just basically agree that the concept that we have in this provision is right? The language, of course, you guys are going to have to approve the language. I'll be the wordsmith on it, but you guys ultimately, and we're going to keep on going back to these provisions because we're going to sort of tinker with the language, we're going to tinker with the concepts. So my rolling on is sort of, let's just have a general consensus on the provision itself. And usually, I swear, probably 85% we're going to be able to get a general consensus.
So how do we get to general consensus? I raise your hands, I nod the heads.
No,
How do I do that? That's my question.
I'll read it, or the chairman will read the section.
Okay.
And we'll say, has anybody got any problem with the way this is written? And then if somebody does, we talk about it. And then we talk about it until we don't have a problem with it. And generally, most of the times, there's a little tinkering with the language, there's a little tinkering with the concepts, but basically we'll say, everybody sort of nods their head, and we move on. So there's no formal vote, but there's a general consensus that this is how we move on.
Okay.
If we see like there's a little bump in the road, it's like an either or A, B, or C choice, can you just say, okay, it's going to be this, or this, and we'll move on, we'll come back to it? So you kind of have the framework for it, but you're not going to hammer it out at that point. You just,
If we can
placeholders, roughly.
if we can just sort of say, if we have an either or on something you're sticking on, an either or, I'll put the either or on, we can write it both ways. If we can say, we can't even reach an agreement on this, we'll just move that section, we'll just say, let's go on to the next section. We'll leave that whole section for another time. And if that doesn't work my way is your way, essentially. I want to make sure that you all are happy, because ultimately, it's your draft, it's your process that I have to basically embody. My experience, however, tells me that, we can get hung up on a lot of different issues. And I would hate to be formal. I would hate to take anything formal at this point. And I guess you're not saying that.
I'm not saying,
Yeah. And that's it, and that's a good thing. As long as we understand the general consensus idea, because I promise you, most of the stuff you're not going to get hung up on.
Okay. I'm going to propose that since we have him here, that we spend at least the first hour of this meeting seeing if we can start to write a charter. And he can come back for every meeting from here on in. He's indicated to us that you need about 20 writing meetings.
Yeah.
So if we do 2 meetings a month from here through May, and some of those meetings we devote to some extent to public forums, we'll be there. And then we'll have room to iron out rough spots and get this done and then submit it in that July 5th to August 5th window that we're supposed to submit it in. So if everybody is amenable to that while we have them here,
Mr. Chairman, just a minute, just before we start that, I don't have any problem with doing that. But I'd just like to ask some feedback from the chair on when are we going to decide on or develop a plan on how we're going to promote this entire venture to the public? When are we going to decide on how we're going to get input from the public? How are we going to pull it together? How are we going to assess it? I mean, do we need to do that or don't we need to do that, Mr.
well, I was hoping we'd spend at least the first hour with Mr. Travala. After that, it seems to me that we could start with a public forum as early as our next meeting 2 weeks from now in September. And in terms of presenting what we have to present to the public, most of the contentious issues are the ones that the public will be most interested in. And whether, while we've all said that we're going to try to be open-minded about listening to both sides of each thing, I don't know how much we have to say. As I said, the first part of this is just getting input from the public. I think the second part is after we've had that input, then we can tell the public, okay, these are the issues we've struggled with, and this is where we're going. I don't see any reason why we can't have a public forum component of our meetings from now through May. My experience tells me that generally public forums in Charles County, if they include teachers, law enforcement, fire and rescue, they're very well attended. Not as well attended for everything else. And we can set aside the time, and we can have it available to the public, and to the extent the public is there, we can listen to what the public has to say. And then when we've exhausted hearing from the members of the public for that meeting, we can continue with writing.
So let me try to get this straight. So your plan for public input is just to have the public speak during or after our meetings, is that it? I just want to get clear on what we...
Well, I don't know that I have, it's not my plan. I hope that when we talk about it after, I hope when we talk about it today, later this evening, that we can reach a consensus that my suggestion, or one in the ballpark, will be acceptable to everybody, and that's how we'll move forward. Okay, I know we have 7 tonight instead of 9, but I'm hoping that all 7 of us can...
Okay, I just want to make sure now. So what you're saying, you're going to propose to the group, and we'll give you a consensus on it. Nothing formal. But you simply, the only outreach that we're going to have, the only source of input from the citizens of Charles County we're going to have is an opportunity for them to speak at the end or during one of our meetings. Is that all it's going to be? I mean, if that's it, then
I'm
fine.
certainly open to other things. I don't know, and I'm open to, I'm not saying that's what occurs to me.
I mean,
Other
you
things
get
may-
invited to things just like you got invited to the homeowners association.
So we're certainly going to do that, but
Yeah, that's
but
fantastic.
in terms of what other input we're going to get from the public, that's my suggestion in how we proceed as far as meetings, but what other input we're going to get from the public, people are going to come up to us and say things to us, and we're going to come back to the group and we're going to say, this issue was raised to me and so forth. So I'm just suggesting that as a way of proceeding, that's a potential way of proceeding. Okay?
May I add something, Mr. Chair?
Sure.
I think, if we spend we need to spend the bulk of our time drafting. It's going to take 20 minutes, it's going to take 2 hours. What we've done in the past, what's worked in the past, is that if people are present and they speak at like at 9 o'clock or at 8:30, whenever we're done, and we listen. Usually there's 15, 20 minutes of when people show up, they want to talk about specific things they've heard, they want to vent. You give them that opportunity to vent. At other times, however, when we're not drafting, then it's useful to go out to the public and go to the Rotary clubs, go to the Chamber of Commerce, talk to those. So there's a drafting exercise, which is primarily your responsibility, and then there's a listening exercise, which is also your responsibility. But from a process standpoint, I know that we can't spend too much of our drafting time, listening to the public. It should be, you can listen some, you should be listening some all the time. Anybody shows up and they want to speak, because it's a public forum. A public forum doesn't mean you have the opportunity to speak unless you give them the right to speak. You want to give them the right to speak. But as we see, we're crowded with people now, so I don't know how much people are going to really show up.
So we're not going to have public hearings as required by the resolution?
Well, first, okay, we'll ask Mr. Travolta to address this, but as far as the resolution goes, we're not, the Maryland Constitution defines what we do and don't do, and the resolution, to the extent it differs from the Maryland Constitution, it's a suggestion. Is that a fair reading?
That's a reason, yeah.
Okay, so if, to the extent that, for instance, the commissioners have a code of civility, no one is going to be removed from this board for violating that code of civility. To the extent that the commissioners had an attendance policy, no one can be removed from the board. This board is a constitutional entity, so the commissioners can make suggestions that we should all attend meetings and we should all be polite, and those are certainly reasonable suggestions. And anything in the resolution is something that we should give weight to.
Okay.
But we're not bound by it.
That's right.
Okay.
And
So-
usually public forums are somewhere in your
Okay.
process.
Okay.
And, my view is, because I've gone through a number of these things, is that oftentimes people want you to suggest something to them before they have a
Yeah,
clue.
it's like-
If you ask them, what do you guys think? They're not going to know. So you put something in front of them and say, would you like an executive that had these powers? And they'll say, I don't know. Then they'll start really dealing with the subject matter. But if you just put something out there and say, well, we're drafting a charter and we think, what do you think are the hot issues? You're not going to get too much out of it.
Do you want to talk about this later? Because I have some things to say, but I can hold it until later.
I'm finished for this point. So-
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we ready to go forward trying to draft?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. We've all been told that Frederick County is as a model. So I was going to suggest that we open our books up.
Excuse me.
Everybody else have their...
So is the process for this, we're just going to look at it and tinker with it as we're talking, not like project it or,
Yes.
and then write and you see it, because,
Yes. I'm going to suggest that we look at each page of it, and we can go by paragraph. And, I'll be happy to alternate with Victor and read I'll read a paragraph, and then he can read a paragraph, because I don't know how long this is, I won't wear either of us out, but we can read a paragraph and see if the language seems acceptable, or if someone wants to tweak it.
Sounds good.
Then we can listen to those suggestions and move on. Okay. You're at a bit of a disadvantage since you don't have it in front of you, but
You want to use mine?
copy, but I just find it
I've
easier to.
got it.
Victor and I can share.
No, I mean,
I brought a
just
copy.
bringing me a copy. I'm not worried about that. I just, as a,
Well, we can start with.
I mean, I'm an old policy person. That's how we did it. Everybody in the room, we put it up there and we argued it out. When we all could make little changes and see it.
we can talk with Melody about how high-tech or low-tech we're going to be with it, but tonight, let's see if we can just struggle with the paper copies. So, I guess we'll start with the letter of transmission.
This guy, we made them all up, but
Try this, okay.
Which one do we use, Frederick or Cecil?
Frederick.
Frederick?
I'm about to read from Frederick.
Okay.
Okay, the first paragraph is the preamble. I'm going to edit and put Charles in wherever it says Frederick.
Okay.
We, the citizens of Charles County, Maryland, a body corporate and politic, under the Constitution and general laws of the state of Maryland, in order to establish a more dynamic, efficient, and responsive form of county government, which shall be empowered by us to exercise greater local authority to govern and be manifest in its scope to all, do adopt, ordain, and establish as our instrument of government this Charter of Charles County, Maryland.
Is that pretty standard?
No, if some people don't even want a preamble in there. It's not a legal requirement, and every charter board fiddles with it just to get the right feel for the population that they're serving.
And what's the purpose? What's its sole purpose?
You know, really, it's sort of an advertisement that this is about you, the people, who are going to now control the government of this county. And that is what is attempted to be embodied here. And, you know, we use some little, dynamic language, dynamic, efficient, because they wanted to sort of pump it up. This is Frederick. They wanted to pump it up, but it is just really an opportunity to convey that really things are changing now. It's you, the people, now that are now governing under this document.
May I suggest that you take a quick look at the preamble on the Prince George's County, because that shows you almost like a completely different way of approaching it. They bring God into it. But I mean, just to your point.
Yeah, no, it is fooled with, and it's not usually, no one really cares about it at the beginning, but at some point, when you're thinking about how you persuade people that this might be an interesting thing to take a look at, it's the first thing on the page. It's worthwhile.
Why are we here, kind of?
Yeah, exactly.
Is it accurate, though?
Is it accurate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that statement's accurate. I don't think you're going to give more power to the people.
Oh, yes, you do. Absolutely.
From code?
For charter, what you're doing under charter, the fundamental difference between charter and code is that there's a charter, which means that right now, when you ask who is actually setting the rules of this county, it's the county commissioners. It used to be the General Assembly. When you got code home rule, they switched it to the county commissioners set the rules.
Correct.
Under a charter form of government, it is the voters who are establishing the rules under which this county is operating, and that's what this document is in shorthand. I call it the rules under which you're going to be governed. Basically, the fundamental principles. So really, it is a transfer of significant power to the voters. The question always is whether the voters pick it up and actually exercise that authority, but we are certainly handing it to them on a platter when you have a charter.
Why you say that, sir?
Well,
Can you give us an example?
that blows my mind.
Well, for example, the size of your governing body. Right now, that's determined, actually, it has been determined in Annapolis, and I suspect that you can't change it. Well, you might be able to change it. This is sort of a questionable thing. I won't even go to that. But the size of your governing body is certainly what the voters are going to be determining. How you elect your governing body, whether you elect by district, at large, whatever you want to do. All of those components that you've all been debating, you don't even have the opportunity until you have a charter to even have that debate.
I see. Makes sense.
Well, that's a good starting point. I see Cecil's is the same thing.
Yeah, it was close. It was close.
It's like 90% the same.
And I know when we did Washington County, which was a failed charter, but not because it wasn't a good charter, they just knocked it out entirely, said that's just too much dross for us.
Dan, can you live with that paragraph?
It doesn't make any difference. I mean, I've seen all the preambles on it. It's immaterial to me. I philosophically think if you're selling this, I don't agree, but that's just me, because I don't foresee a voter having more power. I see the county executive having
I mean,
power,
when people say
but not the voter.
It says greater local authority. It doesn't say, it says greater local authority, so that could be the county exec, couldn't it? I don't think it's inaccurate. where it puts the greater. Because greater local authority, it doesn't say.
Right. No, I mean,
Are we splitting hairs?
No, actually, no. If you're talking about power, local power, let me tell you where there's a big difference or a perceived difference. And of course, well, let me tell you, you get police power in a charter form of government. That's not, the cop on the beat, enforcing the law. Police powers allow you to pass any ordinance that improves the safety, peace, good government, and health and welfare of this county. It is a huge grant of power. The courts say it's the largest grant of power that any government can have outside war powers. It is the same grant of power that the General Assembly uses when they legislate on behalf of the voters trying to enhance their life. When they do that statewide, they're using police power. You get the equivalent amount of state police power in the charter form of government. It is, in the code form of government, it's a little bit more debatable whether you have that. In my little book there, I go into quite a lot of detail about that. You probably do have it, but we know we have it with the charter form of government. It's a little bit more questionable with the code form. So right there, in terms of local power, you've got it under charter. No doubt about it.
I don't care one way or the other.
Okay.
I'm not going to easy sleep over it.
Okay. Moving on then to Article
Easy
1,
peasy.
general provisions.
So let me ask a question. I mean, do we have a consensus on that, or are we just going with the flow?
Well, I looked
Just-
around the table. Is there anyone who has any other comments with regard to the preamble beyond?
I do have a comment. So what I am in agreement with is in the second line, it says, in order to establish a more dynamic, I do want Charles County to have a more dynamic, efficient, and responsive form of county government. So that is a part of the sentence that sticks out most for me. So I would like for those words to stand. I want that.
So you don't have any changes to this paragraph?
No.
Okay. Does anybody have any suggested changes?
I want that.
Okay, I don't hear any, so I'm going to take that as a general consensus. Article 1, General Provisions, 101, Body Corporate and Politic. Charles County, as it now exists, constitutes a body corporate and politic. Under this charter, it shall have all the rights and powers of local self-government and home rule, as are now or may be provided or necessarily implied by this charter, the Maryland Constitution, and the laws of the state of Maryland.
That's pretty boilerplate.
Any comments?
Make Frederick
Okay.
Charles, right?
Were necessarily implied by this charter.
Yeah. The powers, there's a rule called Dillon's Rule, and it says the powers that you get from the General Assembly, and in this case, we've got it through Article 25. We'll go through all that stuff. The powers you get are those that are expressly provided, those that are implied by the language that you see that is empowering you, and those that are necessary to carry out the provisions that the General Assembly has delegated to you. So a lot of people hang up on that word, or some people hang up on the word implied. It's like we're going too far, but that is just basic local law, which generally is called Dillon's Rule, out in the wide blue yonder for law.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. 102, exercise of powers. The powers provided in Section 101 of this charter shall be exercised only by the county executive, the county council, and other officers, employees, and agents of Charles County, acting under their respective authorities and under such authorities as may be provided by this charter or by law. Obviously, this one implies the county exec. We want to, let's see, any comments on whether we should leave this as it is or?
Leave it as it is.
So to be specific, we are in favor of a county exec, is that true? If we agree to that, that's what we're saying.
I'm asking.
Well, yeah, I understand
Yeah.
that point,
I'm asking if anybody wants us to, any comments on this? Does anybody want us to pass it at this point or tentatively leave it as it is?
Well, my comment still is, would the effect of this be us agreeing, preliminarily agreeing to have a county executive? It's yes or no?
Unless we change the wording from county executive.
You would just basically strike out county executive. It would be the county, in the counties that don't have a county executive, that language, that term is stripped out. So you are at least saying, at the moment, I can live with this. That's basically, on all these things. At the moment, I can live with it. That's all it means.
Well, I don't know, but
And
you
what else
can
is
live with it. It
there?
says county executive.
Okay.
Well, that's one of the things we're gonna discuss.
I'm gonna make a suggestion. Okay, why don't we do it alternatively, one using county executive in it, and the other just not deleting the words, the county executive, comma.
I'll just make that draft and make sure that it's ambiguous, that either way is still a you know.
If it didn't, if it didn't read county executive, what would be the suggestion?
Well, my point is that I'm in favor of a county executive, and I'm just trying to figure out if this...
I think we can leave it as it is.
Yeah, I'm in favor of county executive. I just asked.
You know, once again, can you live with it at the moment so we can sort of move on?
Then you can.
Right, I said I'm in
You
favor
don't
of
have
county
to use the
executive.
Yeah.
search and take them all out.
So why don't we just leave it in until you guys say, well, we're not having a county executive, and we'll all strike it all out at that time?
Okay.
I think that's going to be one of the points that the public is really going to be most interested in, so, I mean, I think at this point, it's a moot point. We can live with it, and then if they say, I want
We can change it.
whatever, we just make
Well,
a
you know,
change.
what you tell the public right now is you tell the public that there are no decisions. All we're doing is just
Right.
wandering through the charter and trying to get something on paper. And so anytime somebody says, well, you have a county executive in there, it says, well, it's just a placeholder.
Right,
Okay. Is everybody good with that?
yes.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Name and boundaries. This is 103. Name and boundaries. The corporate name shall be Charles County, Maryland, and it shall be so designated in all actions and proceedings touching its rights, powers, properties, liabilities, and duties. Its boundaries and county seat shall be and remain as they are at the effective date of the charter unless otherwise changed in accordance with law. Boilerplate. Okay, I see no one about to make a comment, so I'm going to move on to 104.
Can I make a suggestion, Mr. Chairman?
Okay.
I think definitions are something that we can get to later.
Yeah.
They are really unique to Frederick County. And as you see, if you just sort of flip the page, we're just saying, county means Frederick County, here it would be Charles County. When we get into something like the budget and we want to know exactly what it means when we talk about the budget, then we'll put definitions in here that sort of work for it. So let's just sort of skip the definitions and we'll come back and fill them in as we need to. Make sense?
Let's follow Mr. Travala's advice. Okay. Article 2, County Council. There shall be a county council of Charles County, Maryland, composed of
Blank.
blank?
Big blank.
Okay, composed of council members.
Big blank.
Should we leave it blank that way?
Can we put? It looks like it's consensus going to be 5 or 7. I don't know why we can't put that down. But if you want to leave it blank, fine.
I would propose 5. Propose 5.
Put it as 5. Okay.
Yeah, we should
Should we
say
say
5. If no, we can change it.
or we can leave it? Why don't we leave it blank for today? Composed of council members. Composed of 5 or 7 council members.
Okay.
You with that?
I would be fine with
Okay. Thank you. 202, powers. All the legislative powers which the county may exercise under the Maryland Constitution and laws of the state are vested in the council, subject to those powers retained by the people of the county as set forth in Section 308 of this charter.
308 is the referendum powers.
308.
308 is referendum. Does everybody understand about what referendum is?
308.
Page 12.
You said Section 308?
Yes.
Page 12.
Okay. We're in Frederick County, right? Oh, no wonder, okay.
Should we review referendum before we
No.
move on beyond this?
No, just the general idea here is that the legislative powers are all vested in the council, but when you get to referendum, you've just given it to the voters at some point. So that's what that's referencing. And so when we get to referendum, we'll lay it out, because that's something that you're going to want to work on. What goes to referendum, what's the size of petition we need to have. And then we'll go back and refer back to, if there's any issue, we're always going to go back and say, well, what else has 308 in it? It's going to be Section 202, and we're going to make sure we're happy with that.
Okay. 203, council to act as a body. In all functions and deliberations, the council shall act as a body. It shall have no power to create standing committees or to delegate any of its functions and duties to a smaller number of its members than the whole. The council may, however, appoint special ad hoc committees solely for the purpose of inquiry and fact-finding.
This is a policy question about whether or not you can create standing committees. If you have 5 or 7 members, you have to think about what the committee structure would be. In Frederick, they thought it would be too much to have standing committees, that you would have like a budget committee, you would have these types of things. I work for the city of Baltimore. We have 15 members, and we've got 5 or 6 standing committees. So you'll see it played out all sorts of different ways. It's just a question. It's your policy call about whether or not standing committees can exist. As you see, what they've done here is say, well, no standing committees, but we can appoint special ad hoc committees. So if you've got to investigate something, council can break into 3 or 4, or whatever it is, to investigate special issues.
So generally, if you're a smaller group, that makes more sense.
Smaller group, the way it's written makes more sense.
Yes.
So an ad hoc committee would be a committee composed of council members or outside?
No, council members. So we're only talking about what the council can do. What we're saying is that the council, to do anything, has to act as a body. This also has implications, too, because if you do have a county executive, can one member of the county order somebody in the administration to do something? And what this says is, council can only act as a body. One council member acting as independently won't work. So there's a number of policy issues that are sort of backed up on this little piece here.
Presently, are there any standing committees right now?
No.
And if there are only 5 people.
Just want to make sure.
So if I understand that, and I just want to make sure I understand that correctly, maybe using the legislature as an example, what this would prescribe, forbid, is a committee structure where, say, the committee of a budget chair could require the treasurer or the chief financial officer of the county to prepare a certain amount of reports that budget chairman feels is necessary for the preparation of county budget. That would all have to be voted on and approved by the full council with this provision.
Yeah, essentially, you break into a committee and the committee itself investigates. So in that particular case, you'd have a budget committee. Let's suppose it's composed of 3 individuals is your budget committee. What they would do would have hearings on the budget, and all the department heads would come in, just like you would have it right now at the county commissioners. But they normally would say, then they would approve the bill that's in front of them. Let's suppose they approve the budget bill as drafted. Then it goes to the full council, all 5 or 7 members of them, and then the council really picks it up again. In a larger body, it makes sense to sort of break it. In a smaller body, it doesn't. So, I mean, that's the sort of, but that's it. When you do have standing committees, it's going to be a much more structured environment than you typically have, because now we have committees giving their opinions on reports. That goes to the full committee. Does the full committee look at the issue any longer, or are they just going to take the word of the word of the committee? Does the entire council take the word of the committee, or are they going to be having their own investigations? Usually, the way it works is that if you have a committee structure, the council will allow the committee pretty much deference over a particular issue. But that doesn't have to be the case. It's just, from my perspective, it becomes more complicated. I work in a world that has that committee structure. It's much more complicated than you would see in the typical county.
Well, I think we've all agreed, we're not going up to 15, and probably, we are in the neighborhood of the 5 to 7 range, I think. So, keeping that in mind, as far as this language goes, are we generally good with this language? Okay. Hearing no dissent. 204. Okay. Skip 204.
204, can I just say something about 204? That's obviously our election process. For Frederick County, I drafted it 4 times before they finally got it. That's why I'm saying it's easy to stick on this. Since you guys, are stuck on this, let's just forget it for a while.
So we're not going to read through it?
So we,
You want to read through it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we can handle it.
Okay. I will, I'll do that. Election. This is 204. A, the county shall be divided into 5 council districts, which shall be designated as Council District 1, Council District 2, Council District 3, Council District 4, and Council District 5. Until changed pursuant to Section 214 of this section,
Let me tell you what 214 is. 214 is where we redistrict. Okay? So until it's changed by redistricting,
the boundaries of the district shall be as provided in subsection F of this section. From each of the 5 council districts, the voters shall nominate and elect a council member who is a resident of the council district. Should I break this into, okay. The voters of the entire county shall nominate and elect 2 council members. Among the candidates so nominated, the 2 receiving the most votes shall be elected. D, no candidate may run for office simultaneously under the provisions of subsections B and C of this section.
so you can't run at large, and then you can't run for a district at the same time.
Okay. Beginning in 2014 and every 4 years thereafter, council members shall be elected at the same time as members of the General Assembly are elected in the manner provided by law. F. Well, I'm not going to break it down into the districts.
Okay.
They use the election districts and say so many election districts and precincts make up each of the council districts, and that's how they divide up the 5 council districts. Obviously, we could do the same.
so
Okay, G. The descriptions of the council districts in this section including all references to I, election districts are to the geographical boundaries of the election districts as they existed as of April 1, 2010, and II, precincts are to the geographical boundaries of the precincts as reviewed and certified by the local board of supervisors of elections or their designees before they were reported to the U.S. Bureau of the Census as part of the 2010 Census Redistricting Data Program, and as those precinct lines are specifically indicated in the
Public law.
in the public law, thank you, 94-171 data, or shown on the public law 94-171 census block maps provided by the U.S. Bureau of the Census and as reviewed and corrected by the Maryland Department of Planning.
Now, let me explain that piece. That came right out of state law, because they had election district precincts in 2010, and then we changed it. And the federal government changed, everybody changed that stuff. So this became a technical piece that's sitting in the same state law about how we draw the state lines. So this became absolutely necessary, but no one's going to understand that. This is the only thing in here that sounds totally incomprehensible, but it was there for security's sake.
Well, when we say it's there for security's sake, just in order for us to comprehend it to some extent, we're going to have, if you have 5 districts, then we have to roughly have the same population in each district.
Yeah, and we have standards. You'll see later on, they talk about how you redraft the districts. And the standards that we have, in other words, we do have court cases that talk about the standards on which you have to draw district boundaries. This goes to 1 person, 1 vote. It goes all the way back to 1960, Supreme Court case. So there are standards that we have to meet. and they are in here when you draw district boundaries. Now, understand that the only time we need to draw district boundaries is when we have voting districts. If you have residency districts, which you have now, you never have to redraw them again. I don't know if you guys know that, but that's true. You never have to be reapportioned because it's all because you're voting at large. You're just simply setting up a geographical area where you're going to be voted from. Until you vote at districts, that's when you have to redistrict every 10 years. And so that often gets lost. When you redistrict, this is what every 10 years you're going to have a redistricting commission if you elect by district.
Well, that's an interesting point. And I just want to mention to everybody, currently, we have a residential district requirement. If it were never reviewed and changed with population growth, it would force, because eventually 85% of our growth, 85% of our 80 or 85% of our population is going to be in the Waldorf area of the county. If we didn't redistrict our residential districts, then there would come a point in time where people would have people in the less populated districts would have less competition to run for office. So that might be something that we would want to address if we go with residential districts.
Cecil County, even though they're voting by residency districts, and they didn't have to go through that for the same reason you're saying, Mr. Chair, they decided that they would make it a requirement that every 10 years that you redistrict. And they kept the same standards, the same high standards for redrawing those districts that you have to use when you actually have district elections. So, so absolutely. That's certainly something to be considered.
Just something, but, okay. But we're going to pass the 204 election, we're going to pass that for now.
Well, we can't even get a consensus on whether we want all districts or we want districts at large combination. We don't want to. We can't express our opinion on that at this point.
Well, sure. You go ahead.
I mean, as a group, and not just me.
My
we're
general
trying to get a
sense-
consensus of the group.
I don't have a sense that there's a consensus on anything with regard to this right now.
Well, how did you get that?
I have listened to I believe there's some people who feel strongly, from listening to them, there are people who feel strongly that it should be at large, and others who feel that it should be by district, and then some who would say some sort of compromise mix. But I don't know whether any faction, any of those positions commands.
Is it possible to get an idea as to where people stand on each one? Is it 5-4? Or is it? I'm not just asking, Mr. Charlie. Is it possible for us to do this? This is what gets me frustrated. We come up with an issue and we say, you can't ask anybody anything. So, so why can't we?
We can.
Poll,
Are we going to poll the board then? Is that what you're requesting?
Well, that's all. Just to get a sense. I'm facing this way, so I can't see what people are, nodding and that kind of thing. That's not my way of thinking that we should do this. But go ahead.
So what do you propose, Mr. Williams?
I'm just proposing that the chairman ask the committee.
Throw some numbers out there, Mr. Williams. What numbers for?
No, do we? How many want 5 commissioners? Council people. How many want 7? So we can get an idea of where we stand.
5.
7.
5.
5.
It might be helpful if you, why 5, why 7? Anybody got a?
He's trying to drag this out, Mr. Victor.
He can pay by the hour.
No, it's not.
The numbers are going.
Sometime you got to have the debate, of course, and it's okay. It's okay if we debate and we say, look, this is what I'm thinking, just so everybody knows what they're thinking. If it doesn't work, that's fine. But it's just how you want to deal it.
And it's not going to take a lot of time. I don't want to delay anything.
So we were answering the very first question, no more, no less, of how many council members. That was your question you put on the floor.
Right.
Right? Okay. So that's the first question.
Right.
So we had 5.
Did we all go through it?
7, 5,
5.
5.
I'm leaning the 5, but I'm kind of curious out. But I'd rather have a county executive and have 5 than not have a county executive.
I agree. What's your number, sir?
I'm leaning towards 5, pretty strongly, especially after hearing some of the public officials on it.
Just
You know,
for-
obviously, everything can change, you know, based on public input, but I'm leaning towards 5.
I would, it seems to me that part of the number 5 or 7 depends on whether it's by district or at large as well. So it's,
I agree.
but at any rate, okay, so that's sort of where we are. We have 2 people who weren't here, and I'm not quite sure where they are on it. But
And just for the record, what was the, you did the 5, 7, what was the? The 10? I didn't keep track. The chairman was going to keep track. It was 1, 7, and the rest were 5s?
Yes.
Okay.
so at this
Thank you. She keep track.
At this point, there's a leaning towards
5, okay.
Okay.
So can I just ask a question? In regards to 204, could we approve D and E and change E to 16, just so we check a couple things
Right.
off? I mean, I'm making an assumption.
Yeah.
I mean, can we do
Everybody
stuff
good
like
with
that, or no?
So it should be 2016 and
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, does it make sense
Well, it
to?
would be beginning 2016.
Correct.
And then, yes, and then for...
Was it
No, we're
2018?
getting
Politician gets running against
2018.
running for 2 offices at the same time. Well, good with that?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but E can't be 2016.
18, right?
It has to be
Well,
18.
Be
that's an
18.
issue. Will we do 2016 or
I thought last
2018?
time we agreed that it was
16.
2,
Yeah.
I mean, the consensus was
What was
that.
the vote?
Wait 2
I
years.
don't know the
That's what I
exact vote,
mean.
but I know what it was.
That's right.
It was that,
Well, everybody suggests wait 2 years, so it should be in 2016.
What, 2016 for what?
the second of the
If
county
you look
executive.
at paragraph E,
Yeah, I'm just asking him to explain what he
beginning
was
in
saying.
2016
For
and
the-
every 4 years thereafter, council members shall be elected at the same time as members of the at the, okay.
Well, it'll be-
As-
it'll be-
Complete that.
Well,
26.
So then it would stay at 2014.
Then, but that would have to be, that's a transition rule. We'd be
Right.
saying something here, we'd be saying 2018 here, and in the transition, we'd be talking about 2016.
Right.
So that would be in the transition
Right.
section.
Yeah, the
Okay.
16.
that'd be 2018,
So we can do
2018.
2016.
Okay, you're right, you're right.
2016, yeah.
Okay.
Let
With
it be
regard to
said,
paragraph
let it be
D,
Singing.
paragraph D, no candidate may run for office simultaneously under the provisions of subsection B and C of this section.
Yep.
Agree.
Understand,
Okay.
this is just for council districts now, so we're just talking about, we're not talking about running for executive as well as running for, so it really depends on whether or not we're running, we have, these guys have set it up in such a way that we've got 5 at districts and 2 at large, and that's what they're talking about. You may not have that situation at the end of the day.
Right.
So-
Okay.
So D is really specialized depending on your
So
election
you're kidding.
process.
Go ahead.
Okay. If there is no B or C, right? Okay.
Right.
So we'll have to pass on that one for a while, Van.
Well,
Well, we don't have a problem with, okay, whatever.
Well-
I was just trying to move some of the bullet
me
points.
too. So I'm just trying, once again, why is that we can't get a consensus on whether we want our council people to be elected by district or all at large or a combination? I mean, why can't we get a consensus on that? I mean, not a consensus, but to get a vote for, let people express their opinion, so we'll know sort of where we're leaning on this thing.
Okay, I don't have any problem with everybody expressing their opinions on
That's-
that. Certainly, to the extent anyone hasn't expressed their opinion in the past, if you want to express your opinion now, you have a feeling with regard to district, at large, or mix,
I'd rather have a by district.
Van?
At large.
I'm an alternate.
Yeah.
I have not decided.
at large?
I'm in favor of combination. District, three districts, two at large.
So but that involves redistricting.
It would. Okay, so we got a little bit of a read there.
Okay.
Okay. Qualifications, 205. Except as provided in subsection B of this section, each council member shall be a citizen of the United States and for at least 1 year immediately preceding election or appointment, a resident and registered voter of the county. A council member elected or appointed to serve as a representative of a council district shall be a resident of the district for at least 1 year prior to election or appointment.
I like that.
Can we, there is, on table 7, on the handout I gave you, you'll see that how the other counties talk about the qualifications.
Okay, there you go.
This is on page 5 of the little handout. And that'll be helpful to sort of gauge. You need a handout?
No, I'm trying to find the one you gave me. I got it, okay. Okay. Which page? 5.
5.
Page 5, okay.
So you see there, Frederick, there's no minimum age that's required. We're required to be a county resident for a year and a district resident for 6 months, assuming they're electing by district. But you can see what we have there in terms of comparison.
One reason I like the year is it stops the scenario that we've had in the state in several instances where someone, passes or leaves or whatever, and then someone moves into a district from somebody else's district. They've been there a month, and then they're appointed. And so that's the one caveat, to have something in there at least. Stops that from
I
happening.
don't have any objections to that. I don't see anything really.
So this is good.
So I don't see anything to object to. What's written. Makes sense.
The real issue usually comes up, people like to debate how long you should be a county resident. There are legal constraints on how far we can push that. We've got the Constitution says we can't stand in the way of people voting. So what you see here is that most people go with 1, and I'm suggesting that you don't. If you're going to go, anytime we go further than 1, we're risking a lawsuit.
Okay.
1 seems really, it's safe, 2 gets probably safe, but 3 is, we're pushing it.
So,
If I might ask, and I appreciate your point, whether that's more restrictive than county rule or county law now for running, say, for commissioner.
Yeah, they have 5 years for county, I think, something like that.
I'm talking specifically for the district. There isn't any residency time now for the district to run for commissioner.
Right.
I'm not sure about whether there's any law for how long you have to live in the county. I'm not aware of the history of somebody moving into the county and immediately running for commissioner. I am aware of some district issues.
Right.
And the downside of that is I know there have been some districts in, currently particularly since the county went to 5, where each party has struggled to find candidates. Do you think this would not negate that ability to or make it more
I think you'd
difficult?
still have that issue either way. I'm just trying to prevent the other issue.
So with the 1 year
lack of finding candidates is a totally different, qualified candidates, totally different issue versus the issue of somebody moving from one district to another just because there's an open seat.
I guess I'm asking, with the 1 year, the requirement that you have to live here 1 year satisfy you, rather than having, have to live in that district for 1 year?
No, I think
if we had districts.
I think you have both.
Okay.
Yeah.
I sort of agree with 1 year for the county residency, 6 months for districts if we have them. I do have one question, though. Do you have to be legally, do you have to be a registered voter to be a candidate for office? You do?
To be a candidate?
Yes.
I
I believe that to be the case, Mr. Wells, but I will check it before
Can you check
next
on
week.
that, please?
Certainly.
Okay.
But
I
I
think
believe
we- I-
that,
I
I
think-
believe that's the case.
Yeah, I'm more of the impression that it's, when you get elected, you have to meet the qualification as opposed to when you run.
Right.
Oh.
So,
I think
so in other words, if you got somebody, if you have an age
Voted
requirement,
on themselves, you know.
state level you do.
so as long as you meet the qualifications
Age
when you
requirement,
actually
yes.
step into
State you
office,
do.
then it seems to me that
State.
usually qualifies.
The state had to be a registered voter.
You check it, Mark.
But the registration books are closed at a certain time, so if you're not
Ah.
registered at the time you sign up to run, you can't register when you're elected.
So you would never qualify for office in
Yeah.
that case. So you could actually, you might be elected, but you couldn't qualify.
That's right.
Exactly.
I,
That would be right.
I will check that by the next meeting
Okay,
for
thank
sure.
you.
I'll send an email around.
Okay.
Leave the language as it is, generally, okay? Hearing no vociferous objections, I'll move on to 205B. If a candidate for the office of county council cannot have resided and been a registered voter of the district in which he or she resides for at least 1 year prior to the election, solely because the boundaries of the district have changed as a result of redistricting, as provided in Section 214 of this charter, the candidate may be elected or appointed to represent the district if he or she meets the following criteria: a citizen of the United States, a resident and registered voter of the county for at least 1 year prior to election or appointment, and a resident and registered voter of the district for at least 6 months. Okay, so theoretically, I'm sorry?
Stop on that, yeah, just sort of like people digest that. That's something new. I don't think that's in any other charter. I think that Frederick really thought hard about this issue, and they put that. He said, well, what if we redistrict? Suddenly you can't hold, you can't, you were fine just a moment ago, and now you aren't? And they thought that was an injustice. And so this particular language went in. And of course, it's only relevant if we have districts, but
Okay, well, we can see what the reasoning was.
Yeah.
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 Is it? Everybody good with it?
yep.
I'm good with the only point on 3, depending on whether you go 1 or 6 on the
1
district,
year or
right?
6
So that
months.
would be the only question I would have.
Okay.
1 year or 6 for what, county residency or for district?
Well, I'd said 1 and 1, which was up in the first paragraph, but then I think you like 1 and 6, and I'm not sure I care either way. I'm just pointing out that we would have to, if we went 1 and 1, we'd want to change the back end of 3.
Okay.
Where it says 1 and 6, where it says 6 months, right?
Or what this is saying is we've just changed, and so we're not going to penalize you totally, so we're not going to make you be the one. Just because of that, if you were there for 6, you get a little break, right?
You have to be a resident of
I
the
just
county.
thought
If
from
they
a
change- if they
consistent
change the election
standpoint.
district
Yeah.
Within a year of the election,
Right.
everybody in the new part of who's new to that district would be boxed out. So
Yes.
they're trying to take care of
Sure.
that issue. I don't, and if they're trying to take care of that issue, I'm not sure I understand why they have to be a resident and registered voter
Yeah,
of the
that's-
district for at least 6 months.
Of the previous district is the way I would have read it.
Prior to
previous.
election.
Of the prior. In other words,
Okay,
they had to have
right.
lived in that district for, and I just want to match up whether we're at 12 or 6. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Oh, I thought it was a new district.
So, I mean, is that something where we need to put a little asterisk to clarify?
When we come to that, when we
Okay.
actually make decisions, all of this stuff is
Yeah,
going to be
okay.
reviewed again, and
Okay.
we can adjust.
Okay.
Okay, C, while serving as a council member, no council member may, 1, hold any other elected public office, 2, hold any other office of profit created by the Maryland Constitution or laws of the state pursuant to Article 35 of the Maryland Declaration of Rights, or 3, be employed by a department or agency of county government which is substantially controlled by the executive or the council.
Look on page, by the way, on that little handout I gave you, page 9. I've got all the other county restrictions.
Table 12, yeah,
Wow.
okay, yeah.
Are there other counties that use the phrase substantially controlled?
No, I think that is something that they dug up in
Yeah,
Frederick.
that seems unique. And hard to define.
The word substantially
For
controlled.
the teachers. You know, can you allow a teacher to run for office And so there was a number of different issues, but that certainly was one of them. And so the issue here, as you see in 3, the idea is, well, Department of Agency of the county government, well, of course they're not, teachers are not, which is substantially controlled by the executive or council. And I can't remember exactly what they were digging on there, but that term was important to.
Or if it's like somebody in the sheriff's department.
In the sheriff's department, the relationship between the sheriff and the county is always a tough one. And you may have already dealt with it. It has slightly different connotations in every county.
So if you were a police officer, you are not substantially controlled by the executive or the council?
Yeah, if you were a police officer, you're
sheriff
controlled by
deputy.
the sheriff, so, you're not.
So you would be eligible?
You would be eligible.
How about any county employee?
County employees would not be able to go.
Because they're controlled by the executive.
Right.
Or they would have to give up their job?
Yeah.
So you could make an argument that if the school board, the teachers are employees of the school board, but they're primarily funded by the county government. You could not,
Well, they're saying,
that's substantially controlled.
no, it wouldn't be
So
substantial.
is the sheriff department.
The school board would not, if a school teacher is not substantially controlled by the county government, it's controlled by the school board. So that teacher would be allowed under this provision here.
He said funded, even though the attachment is the funding.
Yeah, but this doesn't say funding, it says control. He's
Dorchester.
equating funding with control.
Okay, I see.
See how that works?
Okay. Dorchester is much more restrictive. It looks to me like Dorchester includes funding, so there's,
Right.
so it might be a different situation.
Dorchester was concerned, when Dorchester, they were concerned about a council member serving on a liquor board
That's interesting.
and getting paid, essentially. And they didn't want that to happen. Other counties have taken a different tack, but Dorchester, I remember that conversation vividly.
That's what Dorchester is doing is what I think it's at least arguable that the school board is primarily controlled by the county government because they're the
Yeah.
funding source.
Yes.
You have to, I mean, the issue about the school board is always interesting because here you have it, let's suppose you have a teacher now, and the teacher is voting on behalf, he or she has decision-making on the school budget. What I said the last time to the people that I was talking to is like, well, then they're going to have to excuse themselves from the vote, essentially, because they have a conflict of interest. So we shouldn't penalize them forever just because they can't vote on the school budget. But they wouldn't be able to vote on the school budget. You have to you have a 5-member council and one of them has to drop out. How significant is that? So, I mean, you have to go sort of.
So is there
play the
something
game.
in here that says, if you have a conflict of interest,
Yeah, there is.
Employed by department.
you have to
County
recuse
government.
yourself?
It is, no, the ethics law will bring
Starts
that
to
for
take
you.
control.
So, and the ethics, we don't play with ethics, we could play with ethics, we could put ethics provisions in here, but it's really kind of unnecessary. We have an ethics requirement in the state, and then we have and then we have a local law that implements the state law, so we don't really need ethics here, but we can certainly do that if you want to.
Are the ethics requirements for the, I don't mean to get off topic, but since you brought it up, the ethics requirement for the state, does the county meet the same requirements?
They have different requirements, but they're similar.
They have to be substantially similar to a model created by the state.
It's more involved than you might want to.
So then teachers and policemen can run for it.
Under the provisions that you have here.
That's here.
This is it, yeah.
Yeah, a sheriff deputy could run, and a teacher would be able to run.
A police department, no.
I'm sorry, Pastor.
Len, Dorchester, even a retiree can't?
No, they say they can.
No, you can't.
Ken?
It's not.
Oh, it's not considered, okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna
But
be crazy.
Hartford is pretty strict, too.
But I'm assuming that anyone that would run for office under this and is appointed to a state board, College of Southern Maryland trustee, MAIF, IWIF, whatever, they would have to relinquish that and step down before they took oath. Correct? Because if they're receiving a stipend of $600 or more, that's considered income from a state
Well, look at two. Let me hold on to this. Let's go into this in depth here. First, the first one's easy. Another elected office, easy. Office of profit is a term of art.
Yep.
Office is not your, office means you actually exercise some sovereignty in the state, you actually have discretionary making ability. It's usually a higher ranked individual because you're actually, you're making decisions and you're basically operating on your own, so it's an office. And then of profit. So not only is it an office where you're exercising some state sovereignty, you've got some discretion over what you're doing, but you're getting compensation for it. Now in this case, if you're on a board or a commission, you're probably not in an office. You are just a board member, a commission member. It's not an office. You're not exercising state
If it's, some of the ones I named, if it's approved through the Senate process, greenback appointments and stuff, it is considered an office.
I don't think so, because they can't individually exercise any of the power. They're part of a board.
As a former college trustee of the College of Southern Maryland, I had to resign before I had to take the oath at state.
So you were a trustee. It may be.
And it got tied to the stipend. They paid us a $600 stipend a year. And it was, I think, in the law, anything over $500, I could have forfeited the stipend maybe and made the argument, whatever. Right. But I'm just saying that there are those situations. I just want to point it out.
Well, no, it's a great example. Yeah. And what they've done, they classified that as an office.
Right.
And it's, even if you took away the compensation, it's still an office.
That's the way we read it, yes.
Right, I just read in the Fairfax County, their supervisors, they're on these, like, the hospital board, and these different, and they've told them, like, for zoning purposes, like, I think 3 out of 11 could vote, because they all had to recuse because somebody had contributed to their campaign or whatever, and the lawyer said, any of these issues where you've got any financial or had somebody in, you can't do it. So now they're talking about they've got to go back to the General Assembly or something because their hands are so tied they can't vote on anything in substance.
Right.
Okay, so with regard to this point 2, that is C, paragraph 2, we want to be careful, because it may be that we want council members to be able to sit on the hospital board or the college board or some such things.
Yeah.
So that's something.
Yeah. There's a whole body of law defining office of profit.
There is. It goes in. We can. Let's explore this later, and we'll bring up Article 35. This is Article 35. I mean, all we've done is just reprinted Article 35. Because it seemed to be the fastest decision tool that we had when we were doing a federal. But let's explore that the next time around.
Okay. Let's see if we can finish Article 2. Term of office. A council member shall hold office for a term beginning at noon on the first Monday of December next following the election of the council member and ending at noon on the first Monday of December in the 4th year thereafter, or until a successor is qualified.
That's, by the way, that's just boilerplate. I mean, you have to go by that, and there's no change in it. I mean, it doesn't necessarily be the first Monday. It could be whatever Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever day you normally do. But
what is it now? When did they take office, Barbara?
I think it's the first Monday.
First Monday
of
after
December. Yeah.
December. Okay.
So it's like no change, really.
And now they have term
limits.
Number B. No council member may serve more than 3 consecutive terms. You can certainly kick this around.
I do have terms here. I just got to find the page. Term limits on page 5. Yeah.
Now, when we make a generic statement like that, are they speaking for both the county exec and council?
No, we'll have a different section in the executive.
Gotcha. Okay.
And this one says no council member.
Right. Just want to make sure.
Okay, well, and this list includes most of the variations that we've heard about.
Yeah.
And certainly, on the one hand, everybody's term is limited. Their terms are limited by the public, by the voters, and then on the other hand, the incumbents have an edge. So we've talked about this. Everybody, I think we've aired out just about every facet of this that we can.
So where do we stand on that now
Leave a
as a
blank
group?
or a question mark.
Generally, okay. Are you in favor of some sort of term limit?
I would say 3,
Okay.
based on,
3, 4, just for the
That-
council we're talking about.
Yes, that's correct.
Well, okay, let's just do generally yay or nay for some term limit before we try to narrow down a number on this.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay, so you see some term limit as being valuable?
yes.
Correct.
Two,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
okay.
No, but
No.
I can live with it, so.
Okay.
It's not the
Yes.
problem.
Okay, so we're working, and even though we don't have two people here, it looks like we're moving towards some sort of term limits, unless we hear something different.
I think that would be appealing to voters,
Yeah.
so that's a strong consideration.
There are very good arguments both ways.
Yeah.
Okay, so tentatively, I mean, we can talk about numbers here. Should we just leave the language there as it is now, or do we want to put a higher or lower number? I believe Mr. Murray was Murray Lee was approaching 5 during his talk with us. Can you get down to 3?
Yeah, you got back down to 3.
Get it? Okay. Okay. Sure. Do we want to put a number on it? Okay, and now are we talking consecutive or total? Because that's the other approach to this.
Consecutive. Consecutive.
Starting consecutive, okay. Van?
2.
I'm sorry. What was yours?
3.
3.
Camilla?
3.
2.
3.
For council, 3.
And Mr. Chair?
So I'm going to put 2.6.
Yeah, what about you?
What's your thing?
Yeah.
He don't like anything because he ran some
I
of it
think
many times.
from what I've heard, the argument rather than, it seems to me the idea of having, rather than a total limit, a consecutive limit is, fits more in with what we might be trying to accomplish, that is, in allowing other people to get involved. So if you were to say two consecutive, then the person's out, I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other on, I don't see this as a make or break issue, but if we say 2 consecutive, to me that makes more sense than saying 3. I mean, if someone wants to run twice, then they're out of it, and then they want to come back later and do
Let's
it
say
again.
2
Well,
or 3.
the 3 is consecutive, too.
Yeah, they're both.
They're both consecutive.
Okay.
So was your, about being consecutive, or was the
I would-
number?
I think it's more important just to cut the number of consecutive terms. Once we get up to, I guess my feeling is that it's our government is better if we have more people being a part of the government, and there are huge advantages.
But
to
every
being
one of those officials, and I guess what you're saying is self-interest, said, did not go along with that.
Well,
And that's what happened. When,
Yeah.
I'll just give you a
But
quick
just the
brief
learning
history.
curve.
In
Well, the learning
'94,
curve,
when the
yeah.
Contract of America came in, it was a large Republican that
Yeah.
won in Maryland, for example, even in Maryland. And all of them signed the contract and ran on the contract. I served, and I went in the same time. Only one person came out in 8 years that lived up to what he ran on and said term limit. And that was a fellow
Well,
down in
maybe
Rundle
they
County.
became-
So that's what happens.
they understood
Unfortunately, they get in, they
that-
stay in, and they don't want to get termed out. So when you're right, when no elected official that sits in front of you is going to sit there while they're already in office 2 terms and say they want to be termed out. I look at it differently. I look at it that the problem is that we don't get people to move up and down the ladder, so to speak. Like I've always said, if you run for county council, then you run for county exec in 2 terms, and you have the expertise and everything to be a good county exec. Or then you go to Annapolis. Or maybe you're in Annapolis and you come back and you're a great member on the school board, because then you know where the funding is and how to get the funding. So I wish we would get people out of office, from one office and go to another office and move around, so that they would get a bigger picture of the whole thing, rather than sitting in the same chair for 20 years. Yeah, that's just my
So the more I listen to Ben, the more I'm inclined to go with his view on that.
Well,
I forgot your view.
So, at any rate, we have two people who aren't here, so.
Good job, just wait.
well, I think that's what,
So where were
So
we?
do we stay with 3 consecutive? What do we do with this?
We'll leave it, we'll just leave it at 3 for purposes of
That's fine.
this evening.
you know,
Yeah, that's
you can
fine.
always give them things, it's not a bad thing.
Right, I'm fine.
Okay.
Made a
Did I
decision?
read this?
No,
I
you
didn't
can go
read
to
this
salary.
again? Okay. For purposes of the restriction imposed by subsection B, a council member who has been appointed to fill a vacancy and who has served 2 or more years of that term shall be considered to have served a full term. An appointed council member who serves less than a 2-year term shall be considered solely for purposes of subsection B restriction not to have served a term as a council member. Okay? That's where they drew the line. Okay?
So basically, if you're 2 years or more, that's considered a full term.
That's a term.
So you would have 6 years.
Okay.
You could have,
Correct.
yeah.
Okay. 207, salary. For the performance of public duties under this charter, each council member shall receive a salary of per annum.
Do you have a chart on that?
You got a chart on that?
I've got other charts that talk about whatever, and I can bring those in, about what people are making.
I think it's 48.5 though.
This one?
48,500?
For,
Where we are currently?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh.
And there was a,
And
shall we go with that number for now? With the current number? And leave it,
Yeah, because,
no up, no down, we'll just leave it the same for now.
That's 48,500?
48, yes.
Is that the
Whatever it is.
president?
If it's.
no, does the president get any more?
Yes, yes.
Probably because they're full-time.
So then we have to point that out here then.
But
She's-
they'll have.
This is just council.
Oh, no, I keep forgetting, this is for the council. Right, okay.
For the performance of public duties under this charter, each council member shall receive a salary of $48,500 per annum. A council member may not accrue annual leave or be entitled to any payment in lieu thereof. The salary shall be in full compensation for all services performed, but may not preclude reasonable and necessary expenses as may be provided in the budget. The council shall establish by ordinance a compensation review commission every 4 years to review the council's salary in accordance with the provisions of Article 25, Section A, subsection 5, double A of the annotated Code of Maryland. The council may accept, reduce, or reject the commission's recommendation, but it may not increase any recommended item.
Okay, there's a bunch of issues here, right? The first issue that they're trying to get at here is they're saying, you get $48,500, you're not getting a cent more in anything. No benefits. No nothing. You can get expenses, you go to Ocean City, you go to a conference, whatever that is, you get that, but nothing, no benefits. It's a debatable issue, but they debated it that way in Frederick. The executive is treated differently. When we get to the executive,
Yeah.
they treat the executive differently. Now, the Compensation Review Commission, the idea there is, I don't know if you have, do you have one here? Do you?
Yes.
So it's the same,
Yes.
so it's nothing new here, so,
Right.
I mean, essentially, it's just holding on to what
But
this
did
is about.
did they get benefits now?
Yes.
I remember
Yes.
we had that other,
Yes.
that one
Yes.
other chart we saw last time about.
What benefits do they get now?
Health insurance?
Health, the normal health
These
benefits,
are
insurance.
the commissioners.
Yes.
And are they part of any kind of retirement plan or anything?
After
Public,
5 years.
yeah.
After 5 years, you vest as a county employee. It's proportional.
Okay.
You can, I believe you can cash out if, after, if you leave
Okay.
in, say, 8 years.
Yep.
You could cash out, or you could wait until you reach retirement age to collect.
Okay.
If you are one term, just 4 years, then
You just get it all
You get
back.
money.
then you will get cashed out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you had been a county employee and rolled over into being a county commissioner, then you would just tack on.
Okay.
your
So then what we're
time.
saying here is that forget all of that, what we just talked about. You get your 48.5 and expenses.
That's what that says.
That's
That's
what
what
that's what
that-
Frederick
That's what that
says.
says. Okay.
Can I make a statement? Could we agree to have Barbara or Mark or whoever just put together the sheet
Sure.
on what the commissioner, what the current salary is and benefit structure is now? I think they get a car, I don't know if they get a phone allowance, put it all down, bring it back to us, and then we could maybe just agree to adopt the current structure that's there.
Or not.
Or disagree?
Right, or not, but at least we have everything there on one piece
Yeah,
of paper.
some of these that we handed out before came out,
Right.
some is a pension only, Anne Arundel County, some's full benefits, some's no benefits, some's health insurance and life insurance
Right.
only.
Right.
So that's the
You
Gang-
called to mind,
gamut.
remind me of one other benefit that would be, no, it wouldn't be precluded necessarily. The commissioner is a commissioner for 4 terms. There's a dual retirement that is in, you pick one or the other. You can either take the county retirement or you can take the 4-term commissioner retirement. You can't have them both. So if we just had a limit on consecutive, then that would, but not on total, it wouldn't make it wouldn't make a difference. But that's the other retirement program that's available. Is that it, Barbara? As far as we can recollect it.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll bring it back next time.
Paula, I have a question. Has any of the charters ever incorporated a cost of living increase?
I'm not certain, but it's certainly possible. One, you certainly have the option of doing that, but I'm not certain how that would work, and you can probably see that, but I don't think that's the case. I think that would have stuck out. It would have been a glaring addition.
But that's what that salary review board every 4 years generally does that.
See, but the cost of living, if they get it, and the other one, they have to say they get it, so it's no.
It's not an increase during the term. It has to be set, so it might
They
say
can't go
$48,005 your first year, then you get 3% more
Right.
your
Correct.
second year, and 3%, but it would have to be set before you
Before the
retire.
terms,
Right.
right.
Okay, that's pretty
Right.
standard.
And
Is it possible for us to get the document that he requested sent to us in email so before the next meeting so we can review it? Okay.
now, we don't have to, by the way, we don't have to set a salary, right? We
That
don't
was
have
my
to
next
set a
question.
salary in here. Usually, the way it works is that you set a floor, and the idea is that oftentimes you don't want, because some people get, we can do a charter push. Once you have a charter issue in here, once it's in here, then that means the voters can change it. They get ticked off of somebody, and suddenly the guy's making 48.5, and suddenly now he's making 10. I mean, or I'm talking as a group. So usually you put a floor in, and you say, well, this is the minimum, and you can't go below the minimum. I guess you can change the charter, but most charters begin with something in there, but we don't have to put anything. if
So
that
would
was
it
the case.
read at least 48.5?
Well, that would be your determination. So, that's the way it typically is, at least 48.5. And actually, in this one, we said it is 48.5, and then we said the Salary Review Commission can pop it up.
Right.
And I think at the end it says, well, we can't reject. Well, I guess it says you can't reduce or reject the commission's recommendations. But this one says a floor of 22.5. You can't get any lower unless you have an amendment to the charter to that effect.
What factors do you consider in determining how much to pay a public employee like a county councilor?
Your guess is as good as mine. I mean, essentially,
The pay review boards, they do this, right?
they do it all the time.
Yeah,
But
that's
they're
what I mean,
all
so
over
I'm
the
just-
place. That's what I was
They're all over the place.
Right.
Yeah.
And this one, let me tell you, 22.5, does it sound low to you?
Yeah.
Because they basically just chopped it in half. What they decided to do was to say that we want to make our charter neutral. And since we're going to have a county executive, which we don't have a county executive now, but if we're going to have a county executive, we're going to pay them $100,000. We paid them 92, I think,
Right.
92.5. In order to make it budget neutral,
Right.
we're going to have to cut back the council salary.
Okay.
So they cut the council salary, I think, from 36.5, 38, something like that, down to 22.5. It was heavily debated, but at the end of the day, they said, hey, this is what we're going to set it at. And if they want to raise it later on, they can raise it later on. But today, we want to be able to persuade voters that this is a neutral document And 22.5 is the way we get to that point.
So how much has the salary gone up since?
Salary is...
So it's not in effect yet till
It's not in effect,
2014,
exactly.
right?
And remember, we heard the same thing from Cecil County about cutting the salaries to try to make up for having a county executive. And we discussed it a little bit here about whether or not we would want to actually cut the salaries, maintain them, or raise them. So that's a policy decision that we have to make.
And
go
also
ahead.
part-time or full-time, I mean, you're going to go to all part-time or?
All those things were, when Cecil County explained to us what they had done, I think we talked about these issues, and that's something that we can look at if we want to be if we want to try to be budget neutral in the structure of the government.
We had talked about like rotating the presidency and stuff instead of the favorite at-large person the way it is now and that kind of thing. So it would not be the same person. I mean, that's a possibility.
Okay, just to stick with this subject for just a second. I'm sorry, Craig, you had something?
Yeah, question. Mark, the county right now is forming or has formed a compensation committee for elected officials. Is that correct? It's forming. In the past, I think the last one, if I recall correctly, in the past it made recommendations, but the county decided not to adopt
Rejected.
the recommendations
That's
of that,
correct.
of that commission. In this case, is it going to be up to the county to adopt those recommendations?
That's what the law provides. It's up to the
law
council.
provides it.
Yeah.
So it's not that, the
It's up to the
recommendations are
commission.
final unless rejected by it or anything like that.
Is that, do you all set the salaries
Is it
locally? Because if you do...
In other words, if once they make a recommendation, do they go into effect unless they're explicitly rejected by the commissioners?
Or is it like this?
And once you said that, Craig, then that sounded familiar. I'll circulate that as well, because I've got it on my desk right now. I can go get it.
My larger point is it might be instructive how it's done here.
Sure.
For inclusion in this language down the line.
Okay.
Certainly, my strong recollection, and maybe you remember, the county didn't adopt the last recommendations of the compensation committee, and they may have changed their rules this time. Maybe worthwhile to see that line.
I know it didn't go through, the pay raise did not go through the last time.
Correct.
Whether that was for failure to adopt it or adopting it or voting it down, I don't know which way it was.
Mr. Tavalla, regarding the salary issue, I think right now we're saying let's let 48.5 stay there for the time being, perhaps as a base. But the duties of a commissioner on the Code County versus what a council member does, especially given the fact that the commissioners handle both legislative and executive, should they be the same? Or should it be less? I mean, I know you're going to come back and say it's your decision, but I mean, can you?
No, I don't say that. No, I don't say it's your decision, but I wouldn't just leave it that way.
Okay.
It is, I mean, the question is, yeah, I mean, that's what's always talked about, because if you're going to have a county executive, suddenly
Right.
you're not doing the executive function anymore. You're basically, you're a legislative body, not also your operational body.
Right.
Control of operations. So yes, that was one of the justifications for dropping the salaries. You're no longer doing that job, but you're doing something else, and this is a new salary.
Exactly. Now, I mean, obviously, if we were to transition the commissioners who were elected in 2014, the way I see it, they would keep that pay because that's what they started with. We have to honor that. But beginning in 2018, when we do the first 4-year formal election, then
Well, there's nothing lawful about that. We can probably change this, but fairness, if you're
Yeah.
talking about fairness, that's a policy call, and that's your
Right,
rules. But we can
okay.
probably change that. The
That'll be
charter
a good
suddenly
charter.
just says, boom, it is what it is.
right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if we can get through forfeitures and vacancies tonight, and then cover the rest of our agenda before 8:30. Forfeiture of office. A council member shall immediately forfeit office upon: 1, the council member ceasing to be a citizen of the United States, a registered voter of the county, or a resident of the council district to which the council member was elected or appointed to represent. 2, the council member being convicted of or pleading guilty to a felony or crime involving moral turpitude. 3, the council member being granted probation before judgment for a felony or a crime involving moral turpitude. Or 4, acceptance by court of a plea of nolo contendere for a felony or a crime involving moral turpitude. And Spiro Agnew, just to put it in context, was he pleaded nolo contendere, which was basically, I don't dispute that the government could prove me guilty. And that would be different from where we are now, in the sense that if someone, a conviction generally means a final conviction, which includes the appellate process. Here it says if somebody pleads guilty or accepts it or pleads nolo contendere, that's it.
We do.
So this is a little, this is a faster removal from office.
That's good.
We do have on page of that handout I gave you, table 14, which I think is page 13, you'll see what other people are removing.
You
Their
don't want
council
the
people.
Mrs. Johnson.
What's that?
St. George's
Stuffing
County.
money in our
She was
bra.
on council.
What's she?
Told she was going to jail.
Oh.
Copy of the
I thought that was
map.
Anne Arundel. Anne Arundel's got that. They've been struggling with,
Oh, yeah, they're county executive too, but she was a council member, yeah. And
Leslie
because
Johnson.
their county executive was already in jail.
Family that commits crimes together.
this is your, I was just happy to be.
Mental
This is
disability.
your area. It's like my God.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about this stuff.
Yeah.
Dorchester.
The okay, and one thing I just want to mention because it's come up both when CT Delegate Wilson came in and talked to us, and that is this idea of he said there was a concern about obviously we have two county executives, Anne Arundel and Prince George's County, who have run into afoul of the criminal justice system, and I was asked at the Homeowners Association, our county executives, if we have this form of government, are we going to have more problems? And just looking back, I participated in the prosecution of county commissioners, one county commissioner twice, a county administrator, a county deputy treasurer, all with our current form of government, or I guess maybe some of it was before Code Home Rule. So in no form of government is going to be a guarantee that we're going to have good people. Hopefully we'll design it so that it allows good people to do good things, and it limits people who are not as good from doing too many bad things. Okay.
I'm sorry, just my clarification under Maryland law, theft over how much is considered a felony?
Well, it's changed. It used to be there are a number of levels of theft now. I believe theft of 500 or more is still a felony unless it got bumped up to 1,000. As far, that's not the only in terms of how someone is charged. If you charge someone, if someone is charged perhaps with embezzlement, misconduct in office, those are some of the charges that have been leveled against public officials before. Nonetheless, with one of them, I specifically agreed to no jail sentence in return for immediately resigning, because I didn't want to see the person get to, plead guilty and then stay in office while the appeal ran. So this looks to me to be, from a prosecution point of view, better, in that it allows the government to remove it allows for removal of somebody when they plead guilty or nolo contendere.
What about the finding of mental or physical disability?
That's the one I want.
That substantially impairs the member's ability to perform, or if they're in a coma.
Yeah, we kicked that around because it's been in other charters, and we've kicked that around before. And of course, this body decided not to go with that. But that is something to consider.
So if my complete vote, and I know I will go unwavering on this one, is that I would like for that to be in there.
Yeah.
Mental and physical disability. And they go hand in hand.
It gets to be a little sticky,
Where did
though.
we
You just
go?
gotta figure that out.
How do you define physical?
When that,
How do you define physical?
So they could be involved in a car accident where they are in a coma. They have their mental function has been impaired. There could be.
So in other words, they're not separate, they're together. Mental and
100%.
physicals together, not just physical.
So I'm a therapist, right?
Right.
That's my full-time job.
Right.
So if the client comes to me, they have diabetes. So diabetes comes with various elements which cause mental stress. So it's all. So basically, I can't even diagnose someone with anything until I rule out any physical impairments. Seriously. So they go hand in hand. But I definitely believe, especially someone in a county exec seat in below.
Look at Doug Duncan. Look at Doug Duncan. He was going to run for governor, and
Oh, yeah.
This one,
It has to be
Talbot,
in there.
Talbot says adjudication by the circuit court of mental or physical incompetence.
And if we
Or
are,
inattention to duty.
and if our basis is sold on the preamble, and we said dynamic, more efficient, and so forth, then we're not even upholding to the whole
Response.
exactly.
Okay.
How's Dorchester's working, Mr. Devon?
What's that? You got-
How's that?
Dorchester, they haven't used it yet.
They have?
I'm not aware that they've, the malfeasance, misfeasance, nonfeasance. You know, let me the history of that was interesting. There was a Court of Appeals judge when I was working on a charter for Caroline County. Never didn't get passed. A Court of Appeals judge, a retired Court of Appeals judge, put this language in there. And I thought that was really interesting, and I went with him because he's a Court of Appeals judge, and who am I to deal with that guy? So I just sort of let it go, and I've tried to use it. I brought it back for every charter since, but I was so roundly defeated in Frederick, I just didn't even go with that. But how's it gone? It hasn't ever been used at this point.
Okay. Well, there's one thing I noticed in Dorchester. You know, not being a resident or registered county voter, or that kind of thing. But those are almost automatically. You know, if you're guilty of that or if that occurs, that happens. But it says that the malfeasance part is that you're removed by the council.
Yeah, tough stuff.
You're removed by the council. So the council, I assume, would have to have a hearing of some kind.
Yeah.
Give the guy some.
We've got, I mean, at this point, he's got a right, and we have to have a hearing. I mean, there is a whole process which we don't even talk about in the charter. We allow that to be, we allow the county attorney to figure out what that process is going to, what that process should be. It is a sticky process because at that point, who's the council to say that this guy's, mentally incompetent to keep going? It's a real sticky sort of a situation, and that's why it was dumped so soundly, I guess, in Frederick. And I'm not quite certain what we do in Cecil. We took it out of Cecil as well because they didn't think they wanted to go with
It's
that.
in Talbot.
Yeah, and I think we picked it up. I think when I didn't work on Talbot's, that was long ago, but I did work on Dorchester, and Dorchester picked it up from Talbot and thought that was a good thing.
So if I heard you correctly earlier, you said this particular clause has not been, no one has ever executed or acted upon it.
You know, I suspect that the council would hesitate and hesitate. It would have to be such a clear-cut situation before the council would act, so they would know that there wouldn't going to be any particular problem on this.
So it's not necessarily a bad idea to have it in there, just in case it needs to be utilized and executed.
That's a really interesting point, sure.
Right, so,
Yeah.
I mean, if we don't have to
The
pull that trigger.
exception,
Go
the
ahead.
great exception.
The great,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's good just to have it in, because there are plenty of
Cases.
judges and lawyers that
I mean,
have
what
mental
about
health,
Alzheimer's?
really severe mental health concerns that people should be looking at and investigating. Really. They sit across from me and I'm like, wow, you are functioning in your job.
So just, would you just play this out for me, though? I mean, because I know we've had some situations in the Maryland Senate and stuff where we've had to take some people out. But, so, a council, how would this play out? A council person would make a claim to the to the Charles County Ethics Commission?
No.
Or to the full council?
No,
Or
I
to
mean,
the
let's
county
suppose,
exec? Or
and this says misfeasance and a bunch of other things, and then finally we get down to mental impairment. Let's suppose it's just misfeasance in office. Those are all, by the way, legal terms, and we didn't want to fool around with the definitions of that. We thought the law would probably just do fine with those. So we never fooled around with the definitions there. So let's suppose that somebody misses meetings, all right? Doesn't come to any meetings, got elected, hasn't been to a meeting in a year. So is that a misfeasance, non-feasance? Probably non-feasance at that point. The guy's not doing his or her job. So can you take that person out for non-feasance in office? Okay, we hem and haw about that. Council's going to say, well, do we not? Let's go ahead and do it because the guy hasn't been here for a year. So they're going to have, I guess, I don't remember when you have the hearing, because this person has been elected, he's got a right to this particular office, there's this constitutional right, so you have to be protective of that. So we have to give due process. Let's suppose we give due process right there. We have a hearing. Come on, council. Then you come in. We're going to kick you off. What are your excuses? He gives his excuses and say, well, too bad you haven't been here for a year. We're acting under this provision in the charter. You are no longer a member. Bam. And file suit.
And again, so that's started by a fellow council member
Yeah.
or the county exec?
It would be.
says
It would be in accordance with the charter. So presumably, we can have a governmental action. It could be a resolution of the council.
Okay. I was just trying to
That's
figure
actually,
out
it's a really
how
good
it
question
worked.
about
That's
what the vehicle would be, and that's not provided in here, and I wouldn't want to provide the vehicle. I'd say, let the county attorney figure out the vehicle, but we've got the mechanism.
Yeah, because politics are somewhat nasty, and sometimes they don't play well together, and you'd hate to see a scenario where you're 3 or 4 against 1, and, they use just the fact that they dislike the person and make up stuff to create the issue, which, it's weird. But.
And I guess at that point, when when they filed suit and they sued you, then it would go to a court and they'd say, well, does this being absent for a year constitute non-feasance in office? And if they would agree, then they would say, you're right, fine. But eventually, it would end up in court.
Yeah, just don't want the county in a bunch of lawsuits.
Okay, it's 20 after 8. I'm going to suggest that at this point, we give Mr. Turville a break, and we cover some of the other issues that we didn't cover last time, and see where we are for our next meeting 2
Are we
weeks.
going to include that clause in this one, too? I mean,
Will you go ahead and write it up for us?
Yeah.
Okay, write it up for us.
Let's finish that one, and then-
So 3 and 4, we're kind of accepting, and we're adding the clause.
We're going to add that.
Okay.
We're going to add that piece.
the Dorchester rule.
And can I tell you how we should act when the next time we meet, assuming I'm down here with you all, the next time when we'll go over anything that was sticky this time, anything we had questions about, and we can just sort of iron it out, and then we move on to the next piece.
Good.
Okay.
Yes.
You can hang around or you can leave. It's totally up to you. We appreciate all the help
It's
you
your
gave us
notebook, you
tonight.
can have it back.
We'd like you to come. I think we're going to ask you to come back. But maybe you want to stay and see whether we ask you to come back in 2 weeks.
I'll do that then.
You might. Okay.
We can call you.
A couple things. Camilla and I did a TV spot. They were editing it. I haven't heard back yet. Have you?
Yeah, she emailed me back, so they can have it back as soon as they.
They're working on it.
Working.
Okay. Ernie Wallace and I attended the Homeowners Association meeting, and I thought it was good that we were both there. I tried to just list all the issues that were out there. Somebody brought up the reason I mentioned the county exec problem in Anne Arundel and Prince George's counties. That was brought up, and I said, we've had our problems here as well over the years. I passed out the survey to them that I had lifted from Cecil County that I forgot to put term limits on. One of the things I wanted to suggest is that see if we can agree on a survey. I passed it out last time, and I have the copies. I don't know that I have blanks for everybody, but I have the copies that I received back from, and I had many more come back to me from this meeting than I did from the other one. So I can pass this along, everybody can, and if there are other things that we should add to the survey, let's see if we can do that now.
Can I ask a question? So the survey that you passed out, because I missed the last meeting, so I do apologize.
We can just
So this was
email
a group
copies.
survey that everyone had already seen?
No.
No, I didn't have anything, and we tried it, we sort of ran out of time at the last meeting.
I don't even know if I got it.
Well, okay.
We can PDF
So
and
going
email
forward
that
with
to everybody.
The surveys and the questions that we're going to poll,
I'm sorry, I missed a little bit.
I'm sorry.
So going forward with the questions that we're going to hold to any meetings that we're going for, it should be questions that we all agree upon that should be standard. And to hear now that you've already gone ahead and posed questions that none of us are even aware about is kind of troubling at this point for me.
I wanted to pass something out so that people could write their views down. So I tried to be as generic as possible.
So if you could shoot us an email, I mean,
Yeah,
that
let's
would be
do a-
sufficient. Yeah, if you could have shot
let's
us an
do
email, because you're still representing the body.
Comment on it.
Yeah, so
Okay.
comment on the
Okay.
We'll just do an email.
Yeah.
Okay. And as far as
And wait a minute, and I just say you can do an email to do what, just
Of the form, and then
Right,
if you
right.
want to add or delete, make
Right, so
comments on it.
Before he sent that email out, before he passed the survey out, he should have got a consensus from the board
Right.
to make sure we were okay with what he was going to represent.
And that should be the case with a lot of things.
Yeah, because I-
Everything, as a matter of fact.
Mr. Brenner.
We went.
Okay, can I say
Last
something
one.
right quick along those lines, kind of related? The reason I was late, or I was working on a draft presentation for now. It's pretty, it's like 9 slides or something. I emailed it to all of you, just as a beginning, that we would have version control and everything, and we.
I'm sorry, what's now?
Well, he's been to 2 meetings and out presenting things.
I'm sorry, I must
Yeah.
have misunderstood, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so if we go to meetings, we know whoever went, you have the same, it's really, not vague, but it doesn't get in detail because I don't like presentations. I think that's what the talk needs to be. But anyway, I put it out for your comment. So it just says, it's basically, this is who we are, why we're here, what we're supposed to do, this is our approach, these are the issues that we know now, you had talked about pros and cons, and I just put a column for that, so we could fill in some of that stuff, and then basically then it says questions, so you can talk, and then distribute your. So I just thought I'd come up with a straw man, so we could go from there, so we'd have something.
Okay.
It's needed, it's definitely needed, regardless.
Okay. And along those lines, I apologize. I felt I was desperate in going to this meeting when I didn't have a survey, so I scrambled something together. But with regard to letters that we might send to people in response to any communications that we get, whether they be members of the general public or elected officials, I just wanted to run a potential letter back that I thought we might send out, fairly generic. And it would be, thank you for your letter dated, whatever. It has been made available to all members of the Charter Board. Your input and the input of all citizens is important to the Board and will play a role in shaping our efforts to write a charter that creates an efficient and effective county government. Your concern that the citizens of the county have the best form of government possible is shared by all of us. Thank you again. I propose, we received a letter since our last meeting. I propose to send this if everybody is good with it. Okay? Okay.
Yeah, we approve of that, don't we?
Okay. Now, as far as the minutes from the last 2 meetings, the prior 2 meetings, has everyone had an opportunity to review those?
I saw it, this is like a misspelling. 24th is misspelled.
Which one, July 25th?
The one you sent out 2 days ago. Yeah.
August 22.
I can, it's like right in here on the page.
Are there any other? Yes.
In the minutes not sent this week, sent previously, it said that I voted and I can't vote.
It had Kimberly Way.
Yeah, it's
Way,
close.
yeah.
We're really two different people, but it's,
Really,
we're twins, but, you know,
yeah.
Dan DeVito and Aaron Schwarzenegger, we just went through it.
Okay, then, okay, can we pass these out again? We passed these out last time, but I'll pass them out again, because our meeting got,
We were like dashing out because it was 8:30.
yeah. We're going to run a little bit close to 8:30 again tonight. I asked Melody to cut and paste the public forum guidelines that the county commissioners use, and I changed it. I put in there where it says limiting people to 3 minutes. I put 5 as a possibility also. If we move forward with public hearings, we should probably have some guidelines. I believe that since the commissioners have used these guidelines, they're relatively tested. So if everybody can take a look at those and see if there are any amendments that we might want to make.
Bless you.
I'd say 3 minutes, but I think, certainly depending on the turnout, if we see there's 100 people who want to comment, we'll obviously want to keep it to 3 minutes. If it's, there's, 6 people, but, then I think that would be, but I would limit it to 3 rather than, and then you can always go up to, make adjustments to the amount of the crowd.
Matter of fact, they got 3, but they got 5 in parentheses.
I put, yes, the
Oh, you
commissioners
mean
had
that to-
3. I just put
Oh, you
5
mean
there
3
as a
or 5?
possibility.
I like making a presentation using slide projectors, although I know I've gone to county public hearings where people have used presentations, so on.
To kind of split the baby on this, sometimes what they'll do is, in Annapolis, what we'll do is we'll say, if you're an individual, you get 3. If you're representing a group, you'll get 5. So sometimes you get, instead of 4 or 5 people coming up to testify, one will testify on behalf of the group, and they get 5 minutes, or something like that.
Reasonable? Everybody good with that change? Okay. So how do they determine if somebody represents a group?
They sign up as a group.
Sign up.
Sign up as a group?
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
So they're not representing themselves individually. They have to sign up as a group.
Okay. So for individuals, 5 for a group. For someone representing a group. Okay. Anything else? Okay. We are getting into,
So that means this is acceptable to the group? Okay.
asking if there are any other modifications.
I just want to know just how much time in advance, on the fourth one, making a presentation, how much in advance notice do they need to inform the charter board that they would be making a formal presentation using a slide projector, or can they just show up with it?
It says they're supposed to contact the clerk.
But when, like 24 hours in advance or 3 days in advance? Just as a courtesy, I wouldn't want someone just call me the day of.
The way I read this, Melody, correct, I assume that if they don't give enough advance notice, that it gets pushed off to the next meeting.
I would have to have time to set it up.
So would you want to notice how soon, a day in advance, or that they're coming with the whole?
At least a day, if not 2.
So why not 48 hours?
Well, this doesn't say they get it automatically. It says that they can ask for it, and then their request can be evaluated. It may be that
It's pushed off to the next one.
we'll just do it on a case-by-case basis, or apparently that's the way you do it now?
So I just want to be clear. So these are the public forum guidelines that we're going to use during the public
With
part
whatever
of each
amendments,
board
this is the
minute.
suggested, this is what Melody lifted from the commissioners, and to the extent, if these are acceptable with some tweaking, for instance, the one Van just mentioned to us, then we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, but my question is we're going to have meetings in this room, and they're going to be open to the public at certain times, and the public's going to be able to speak. Is that
Well, I
this
hope,
floor?
I hope that we can have meetings using the big room down the hallway.
Okay.
And when we do that, I think it's more conducive to having,
So we have the pre-meeting, then go over there, like,
well, we can, however we work the mechanics of things out. I think 6:30 might be a little bit early to
Yeah,
ask the
that's what-
public to get here.
that's what you'd said before.
But we can have the meetings there and allow people to sign up, and then we'll have we'll close the sign-up list at some point, and then we'll know how many we have, and then we have some discretion built in here. 3 minutes for an individual, 5 minutes for someone representing a group, and if there are any other changes that we think are appropriate to running a public forum, I think it would be good for us to establish those now and hopefully start with the public forum next time.
When you have a public forum, you just basically listen to them and say, thank you very much for your input.
Well,
No.
someone might
That's
say
where someone
something.
went to the county.
Someone might say something that causes us to go, oh wow, okay, well, what do you base
can
that?
engage, that's right.
So it says that, I don't know that we want to engage in debates with
No,
everyone, but if someone says something that we haven't heard before, we may want to explore that. I think it's one of those things where, again, if there are 100 people there, we're going to try to make an effort to hear from as many as we can. And I'll go back to, I don't know how big a turnout we will get for these things. The Maryland Independent told me that if we gave them our schedule, which is one last thing I want to try to cover today, I think we're all good with saying that we're going to have our meetings on Thursday, second Thursday, fourth Thursday of every month. Exception can be Thanksgiving. I don't know how close it
And
falls,
Christmas
but
week, right?
okay. Obviously, that can be an exception, and that they'll publish it. That they'll do a story on the charter board, and if we had a specific topic, they'd give their opinion on it in the paper, and then say, why don't you go voice your opinion to the charter board? So one of the things that the Independent mentioned to me was, like, if we wanted to have the first one say, we'll listen to whatever you want to bring up, but primary focus for that meeting will be term limits. It was term limits. So that's something that's, a lot of people in the public people have a feeling about it one way or the other, and the arguments go both ways. So that might be a good one to start with.
Can I ask, is this contrary to what you suggested earlier, Mr. Travala, in regards to public forums, because they don't know what they don't know? So,
It's up to you all to figure out exactly when you go to the public. My view is that if you go with something specific for them to react to, you get a whole lot more than if you don't. And so if your issue is, we don't know, we're thinking about 5-7 members, what do you think? You're there. I mean, that's exactly what you want to tee up. Should we have a county executive? That kind of stuff. If it's just sort of an open forum saying, well, what do you think about charter? They're not going to know anything. So you come with specific issues and you're ready to go.
What if somebody says something that's not true?
Yeah, you're going to see a whole lot of that. A whole lot.
What's unusual
Well,
about that?
you have to be nice about it, but sometimes you can't let it just go by.
Most of your arguments against are going to be false. They're going to be making stuff up. They're going to go in the corner, and it's not going to be where you ever thought that anybody would ever be. All you can do is just try to educate, try to give the facts as you know them to be, and sort of move on, and have a thick skin. More than anything.
Okay, I'm just.
Mr. Chairman, also attached is the bulletin board that they would like to put on CCGTV, which you can also include that information there. That was something we tried to do a couple months ago for the poll.
Okay. Let me just step back for a second and first see, with the modifications that Van has suggested to us, are we good with this public forum guidelines? Does anybody have any other issues or
We need
amendments?
time to look at it.
So do you want to table this and revisit it at the next meeting? I apologize, I have a prior engagement at 9 o'clock, so I have to.
Okay. This is what I'm going to suggest. Because we don't have the public forum guidelines nailed down yet, I don't think we can have a public forum at the next meeting.
I agree.
Okay? So we'll have Mr. Travala back, and we'll see if we can go through more writing, and we'll budget a little bit more time for these other issues next time to try to make sure we get them all taken care of.
Just one other thing on the public forum. I mean, I agree that if Melanie needs time, then I think we should put 2 days or something in there, because if not, we're going to get the reaction from the person who, there's only 3 of them there, and we can't get it teed up in time or whatever, and they're going to say, well, you didn't tell me that. I saw these out in front when I signed up, and it doesn't say anything about having a day in advance or 2 days in advance. I just think it's a courtesy to both the staff and the people coming when they see it, that's all.
Everyone agree that that's a reasonable addition?
Absolutely.
No dissents? Okay. I think Camilla was about to make a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn, let's go home.
Is that a motion?
How about the minutes? Have they been approved?
Make a motion, we approve.
Both sets?
But I thought you said you had corrections.
Well, I just changed the spelling.
With the exception, okay, so I believe that's a motion to approve with the exception that Paula just gave you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, both minutes are approved. Okay, there was a motion to adjourn. Is that right? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.